The day I found out my daughter sold my house, I didn't scream. I just sat there, holding my coffee, watching everything I built disappear in silence. That house wasn't wood and nails. It was me. Every scar, every paycheck, every night I came home smelling like sawdust and hope. It was where my husband died, where my daughter took her first steps, where I learned how to live without both of them. And now, a stranger's name sat on the deed. No call, no message, just a for sale sign nailed into my heart. People think betrayal comes with shouting. But no, sometimes it comes with paperwork. That morning began one of those grandma stories you wish weren't true. A family drama story about love that built walls, and the moment those walls fell. I wasn't born with much, but I learned early how to build things that last. My father used to say, if your hands can't rest, let them create. So that's what I did. Built, fixed, painted, patched. Every nail I hammered into that house was a promise that my daughter, Clarissa, would never know the kind of hunger I did. Back then, I worked 2 jobs. Daytime in a small furniture shop, sanding oak until my fingers split. Nighttime cleaning offices, mopping floors that smelled of other people's dreams. I'd come home around midnight, my body aching. But the sound of her breathing, soft, steady, was enough to start again the next morning. That house wasn't fancy. We didn't have marble or chandeliers. But every corner had a story. The kitchen smelled like Sunday pancakes and cinnamon. The living room still carried the echo of her little feet tapping to gospel songs. When my husband died, I thought the house would collapse under my grief. But somehow, it stood taller, maybe because I had to. Clarissa was 10 when she first said, "Mama, one day I'll buy you something nice." I smiled and told her, "Baby, you already did. You gave me a reason to keep going." Years passed. She grew, got smarter, started dreaming bigger than this small town could hold. She wanted more than I could give, and I understood that. Every mother does. So I saved, dollar by dollar, to send her to college. Every check I handed over felt like tearing a piece of myself. But I kept saying, "She's my future." When she left for the city, I stood on the porch, waving goodbye. Her last words were, "I'll make you proud, Mama." And I believed her. I believed in the same way builders believe a roof will hold during the storm. At first, she called every week, then once a month. Then, birthdays came and went, with nothing but a text that said, "Busy." I told myself it was fine, that she was building her life, and maybe forgetting was just part of growing up. But the truth? I missed her, like the ocean misses the moon when clouds hide the sky. There were nights when I'd sit by the window, watching the porch light flicker, pretending she might still come home. I even kept her room the same. Same posters, same quilt, same scent of lavender and youth. If you've ever waited for someone who never came back, you'll understand this kind of quiet. It's the kind that fills every room, yet still makes the house feel empty. And if you're watching this on your phone right now, and you believe a mother's love never fades, go ahead and tap the like button, so I know you're still here, listening. People in town would ask, "Naomi, why don't you sell that big old house? You live alone now." And I'd just smile and say, "Because she'll come back. This is still her home." They'd nod politely, but their eyes said what I refused to admit: she's not coming back. Still, I kept the garden alive. The magnolia tree she planted at 8 now towered over the porch. I talked to it sometimes. Silly as that sounds, I'd tell it how proud I was of her, how much I missed her, how I hoped she remembered the smell of home. But the calls stopped completely. after her wedding. I didn't even know she got married until someone showed me a picture on Facebook. Clarissa in a white dress, holding hands with a man I'd never met, smiling like she'd never known a hard day in her life. The caption read, "Family complete, family complete," as if I had been erased. I closed the laptop, sat there staring at my hands. These old, brown, cracked hands that had built everything she ever stood on. And for the first time, I wondered if I'd built too much, if I had given her so much comfort that she forgot where it came from. Still, I never blamed her. I blamed myself for loving in a way that made her forget how to love back. The last time I heard her voice was on a voicemail, months later. "Hey, Mama, just checking in. Hope you're doing okay." The kind of voice that doesn't wait for an answer. After that, the days blurred. I kept working part-time at the furniture shop, still building tables I couldn't afford. The owner said, "Naomi, you're too old to be sanding wood." I told him, "Maybe, but wood listens better than people." There's something sacred about creation. When I run my hands over polished wood, I feel the same peace I used to feel when I braided Clarissa's hair before school. Patience, rhythm, care. Maybe that's why I couldn't let the house go. Because it wasn't just my creation. It was my conversation with life. Then came that morning, the call from the neighbor telling me the house was for sale. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I just sat there, listening to the quiet, realizing that silence was the only thing I'd never built a home for. And yet, deep down, I felt something shift. Not anger, not grief. Something older, deeper. Like the earth finally exhaling after holding its breath for too long. That's when I understood. You can build walls to protect your heart. But one day, those same walls will keep love out too. I didn't know it then, but that was the start of my rebuilding, of a different kind of grandma story. One that would soon turn into a family drama story about love, boundaries, and the strength it takes to let go. It took me 2 days to drive back to my old town. 2 days of silence, of questions I knew the wind couldn't answer. When I finally turned onto Grant Avenue, my chest tightened. The air smelled the same, pine, dust, and memory, but everything else had changed. And then I saw it, my house, only it didn't look like mine anymore. The porch swing my husband built was gone. The door was painted gray instead of honey gold. Even the magnolia tree she planted as a child looked tired, like it had seen too much. A couple stood in the yard, holding hands with a realtor. They were smiling, pointing, dreaming about a future built from my past. Then I saw her, Clarissa, my daughter, my own blood, standing on that porch like she'd never lived there, like it wasn't the place that raised her. She looked perfect, hair neat, clothes pressed, a ring that sparkled when it caught the light. The kind of perfect that comes when life teaches you how to hide your scars. I stepped closer. She turned. Her smile froze. "Mama?" I nodded slowly. "You sold it." Her eyes flickered, defensive. "It's just a house, Mama." Those 4 words hit me like a slap. Just a house? That house was my heartbeat, my history, my husband's laughter, her childhood. It was everything we were, and everything we'd lost. I whispered, "You sold your own roots." She shifted, glancing at the realtor, embarrassed. "Mama, please. Not here. People are watching." Watching? They could watch all they wanted. The only thing I saw was my little girl, the one who once clung to my legs when she was scared of thunderstorms, now afraid of being seen with me. "You don't understand," she said. "I need the money. Things have been complicated." I almost laughed. Complicated. That's what the young call betrayal. when they want to make it sound mature. I said softly, "You don't sell home to solve complicated." The realtor looked away, pretending to check his papers. The young couple exchanged awkward glances, but I couldn't stop. "When you were 6, I told her, "you drew our house with crayons and said, 'It's where love lives.' So tell me, baby, where does love live now?" Her lips trembled, but pride lifted her chin. "It's my name on the deed, Mama." I nodded. "Then may it keep you warm." Because that's what my mama used to say when we lost something we couldn't get back. "May it at least keep you warm." I turned to walk away. Behind me, I heard her whisper, "Please don't make a scene." Scene. That word burned. I was the scene she wanted to erase. The house, our house, was her fresh start. I reached my car, but I couldn't drive. Tears blurred the mirror, and all I saw was that for sale sign swaying in the wind, taunting me like a flag of surrender. If you believe no mother should ever hear her child say, "It's just a house," hit like right now. And if you've ever been broken by someone you love, type 1 in the comments. Maybe together we can remind the world that love isn't something you sell. That night, I parked near the old church and watched the rain draw rivers down the windshield. Each drop looked like a memory falling away. The house lights flickered in the distance, soft and cruel, as if it was saying goodbye, too. I thought of every shift I'd worked, every floor I'd cleaned, every bruise, every sacrifice, all to give her a life better than mine. And I wondered if love, when given too freely, forgets how to be respected. The rain slowed. The sky cleared just enough for the moon to shine through the clouds. That's when I whispered to the night, maybe it wasn't her who betrayed me. Maybe it was me, for building her wings without teaching her how to fly home. And somewhere, in that quiet, I felt something inside me break. Not in anger, but in truth. I didn't know it yet, but this was the night I began to rebuild. Not a house, but myself. The rain stopped sometime before dawn, but I didn't notice. I sat in the car, eyes heavy, heart heavier. When I finally stepped out, the morning air cut sharp and cold, like the truth I'd been trying to ignore. I needed to see it one last time. Not to fight, not to beg, just to say goodbye. The sold sign hung crooked now, the ink starting to run. It looked tired, like even paper had a conscience. Through the front window, I could see boxes stacked high, lights flickering inside. And then I saw her again, Clarissa, standing in my kitchen, the one I built when I was 27. The same year I learned grief could be quiet. I walked closer, the gravel crunching under my feet. I didn't know what I'd say. Maybe nothing, maybe everything. But before I could knock, I heard shouting from inside, a man's voice, angry, then hers, small, defensive. "Marcus, please," the sound of something breaking. Then silence. I froze. That kind of silence I knew too well. It was the kind that made your stomach twist. The silence that comes right before pain. I pushed the door open. No hesitation, no thought, just instinct. He was standing there, red-faced, pointing at her. She was crying, her back against the counter. And all I could think was, this is why she sold it. This is what she needed the money for. I stepped forward, voice steady. "Get out." The man turned, startled. "Who the hell are you?" "I'm the woman who built this house," I said. "Now get out before I teach you what a foundation feels like when it hits back." He glared, muttered something under his breath, and stormed past me, slamming the door so hard the frame shook. Clarissa slid to the floor, shaking. For a moment, I just stood there, staring at her, my daughter, the same little girl who used to fall asleep on my lap while I told her stories about strong women and happy endings. "Mama," she whispered, her voice cracked. "I didn't want you to see this." I knelt down beside her. "Then maybe it was time somebody did." Her shoulders trembled. "I thought if I sold the house, I could pay off his debts. I thought it'd make him stay." I closed my eyes. The pieces fit together now, sharp and cruel. I wanted to be angry, but all I felt was tired. Tired of seeing love used as a bargain. "Baby," I said softly, "you can't buy loyalty with walls and furniture." She nodded through tears. "I know. I thought if I gave everything, he'd see me the way you always did." That broke me, because I realized she had learned that from me. All her life, I gave. Time, love, sleep, dreams, believing sacrifice would always equal love. And she had repeated my pattern, just with a different house. We sat there for a while. No words, just the sound of the clock ticking above us. The same clock her father once fixed after it fell. Finally, I said, "Maybe the house never betrayed us. Maybe we just kept asking it to hold too many broken things." She looked up, eyes wet, voice small. "Can I come home?" I smiled, brushing her hair back like I used to. "You already are." The morning sun crept through the window, lighting the dust in the air, and for a second, it looked like the house was breathing again. Hours later, we walked through every room together. She ran her fingers over the walls, whispering memories to them like confessions. "This is where you taught me to dance," she said. "This is where Dad used to hum when he made coffee." We reached the front door. She stopped, staring at the empty porch. "I'm sorry, Mama." I took her hand. "You don't have to be. Just promise me one thing. Next time you love, don't sell yourself short to keep someone else standing." She nodded, tears falling freely now. We stepped outside, and I watched her breathe in the morning air, like she was tasting freedom for the first time. The new owners pulled up then, stepping out of their car. I expected to feel bitterness, but instead, I felt peace. I walked over, shook their hands, and said, "Take care of her. This house has already seen more love than most people get in a lifetime." They smiled, surprised, and for the first time, I didn't feel like something was being taken. It felt like something was being passed on. As Clarissa and I walked to the car, she whispered, "I didn't deserve your kindness." I squeezed her hand. No child has to earn their mother's love. They just have to remember where it came from. She nodded, silent, and I knew something inside her had shifted, maybe for the first time in years. When we drove away, I looked in the rearview mirror. The house stood there, golden in the sun, solid, unbroken. It wasn't mine anymore, but somehow it still was, because home isn't the walls you build, it's the love you leave standing. For a week after that morning, the house lived in my mind like a song I couldn't stop humming. Even in my sleep, I saw the sunlight spilling across its porch, the way the magnolia tree stretched toward heaven, stubborn and soft at the same time. I'd already said goodbye, but grief has a strange way of pretending it still has something to finish. Clarissa stayed with me in my small apartment on the edge of town. We moved slow, like people learning to breathe again after too long underwater. She'd help with breakfast, folding the napkins the way her father used to, and sometimes I'd catch her humming the same tune he loved. It was peace, awkward, fragile, but real. One morning, she walked in, holding her phone, face pale. "Mama," she said, "something's happening." She turned the screen toward me. A video was playing, grainy, shaky, taken by someone across the street. It was Marcus, the man she'd tried to save. He was standing outside my old house, yelling at the new owners, demanding money. saying she promised him a cut. Then he threw something at their window. It shattered. The police sirens came seconds later. The video had already gone viral. People in town were furious, not just at him, but at the story itself. Everyone knew that house. Everyone remembered the old woman who built it with her hands. Comments poured in. She doesn't deserve this. That home was a symbol of love. Justice for Naomi Grant. I didn't ask who posted it. The universe has a funny way of publishing truth when words fail. By noon, the local news was outside my door. Cameras, reporters. For a moment, I wanted to hide, but then I saw Clarissa's face, ashamed, trembling, and I realized this wasn't about embarrassment. It was about owning the story before someone else wrote it for us. So I stepped outside. They asked, "Mrs. Grant, how do you feel about what happened?" I took a deep breath. The autumn air was cool, sharp, alive. "I built that house with my hands," I said, voice steady. "But I built my daughter with my heart. The house can be repaired. What matters is that she's home." The reporter looked stunned. Someone behind the camera whispered, "That's powerful." Clarissa grabbed my hand, her eyes wide. For once, she didn't hide. By the next morning, the story had spread beyond our small town. A local paper ran the headline, "Mother forgives, daughter who sold her home, then saves her from an abusive husband." It was strange, watching my pain become news. People I'd never met sent letters. Some sent prayers, others sent flowers. One woman wrote, "I gave up my son years ago. You gave me courage to call him." I didn't know whether to smile or cry, maybe both. But what surprised me most wasn't the attention. It was what happened next. The police found out Marcus had a long record: fraud, theft, even assault. He'd been conning women across states. And the house, the sale was now under review because he'd forced Clarissa to sign part of the paperwork under pressure. Suddenly, people wanted to help. The bank reversed some of the transfer. Neighbors donated old furniture to the new owners. The town came together like it hadn't in years. For the first time in a long time, justice didn't just feel like revenge. It felt like restoration. Clarissa couldn't stop crying when she heard the news. "Mama, I ruined everything," she said. "And now everyone knows." I took her hand. "Maybe they know, but they also see who you are now. That matters more." She looked down. "You don't hate me?" I shook my head. "Baby, hate's too heavy for these old bones. I choose lighter things now." That night, she fell asleep on the couch, and I sat by the window watching the moonlight crawl across her face. It reminded me of when she was little, how she'd fall asleep on my chest, trusting the world without question. Somewhere between then and now, she'd lost that trust. But maybe this was how we found it again, not through words, but through consequence. When dawn came, I made coffee, slow and careful. I thought about all the years I'd spent trying to hold things together. The walls, the bills, the people, and it hit me. Maybe things fall apart not to punish us, but to prove we can still stand without them. By afternoon, Clarissa came to me with a letter in her hand. "It's from the buyers," she said quietly. "They're offering to return the deed if I help repair the damage Marcus caused." I smiled. "That's not mercy, that's grace." She frowned. "I don't deserve it." I looked her in the eye. "Then earn it." She nodded slowly, tears brimming. For weeks after that, she worked with the new owners, painting, fixing, planting flowers in the yard she once neglected. People drove by just to watch. And every time someone passed, they'd wave and say, "Looks good, Clarissa." The same town that once whispered now applauded. And I standing at the gate, realized something I'd never dared to believe. You don't need to rebuild the house you lost. Sometimes, healing means helping someone else build theirs. As the sun dipped below the rooftops, I felt the day quiet inside me. Not empty, not sad, just quiet. The kind of quiet that doesn't ache anymore. Clarissa came up behind me and said softly, "You always said life comes back around." I nodded. "It always does, baby, just not the way we expect." She smiled, small and real, and for the first time in years, when she called me Mama, I didn't hear guilt in her voice. I heard love. The weeks turned into months. The house, once a wound, began to look like a heartbeat again. Alive, steady, forgiving. Every day, Clarissa came home with paint on her hands and dirt on her jeans. She'd smile shyly, saying, "I fixed the fence today," or "We planted new lilies." The neighbors started leaving fresh pies on the porch. Old friends stopped by with coffee, and I'd hear people whisper, "That old Grant house finally feels right again." I didn't correct them. They were right, but not because of the paint or the flowers. It was because my daughter had come back to herself. One evening, just as the sun was sinking low, I was shelling peas by the window when I saw a police car pull up outside the house. 2 officers got out, and between them, Marcus, head down, wrists cuffed, the man who'd tried to destroy what he could never build. Clarissa froze at the sink. "Mama, what do I do?" I wiped my hands and walked outside. The air was still. The whole street seemed to hold its breath. Marcus looked up, his eyes empty. "I'm sorry," he muttered. "Didn't mean for it to go that far." I stared at him for a long moment. Then I said, "You can't burn down something that's already survived worse than fire." He dropped his gaze, and for the first time, I felt no hate, only pity. He was just another broken soul who never learned how to build anything that lasts. The officer asked, "Would you like to press charges, ma'am?" I looked at Clarissa, then back at them. "No," I said. "Let the law handle the law. Life already did the rest." They nodded and drove away. And as the car disappeared down the road, I realized justice doesn't always wear a uniform. Sometimes it just shows up quietly, carrying peace instead of punishment. The story didn't end there. A week later, the same reporter came back, camera in hand. She wanted to do a follow-up for the evening news. She said, "Mrs. Grant, people are calling your story one of the most inspiring grandma stories we've ever covered." I smiled. "Honey, it's not a story. It's just life, messy and merciful." She laughed softly, then asked, "What would you say to people who feel betrayed by their own family?" I thought for a moment. "Don't rush to seal your pain in concrete," I said. "Sometimes the cracks are where the light comes in." Her eyes softened. "That's beautiful." And I knew she wasn't talking about the house. After that interview aired, letters came in again, more than before. People from other towns, other states, even other countries. One woman wrote, "Your family drama story gave me hope. My daughter hasn't spoken to me in years, but I'm going to call her tonight." Another said, "I lost my home last year, but your words reminded me that home can live inside the heart." I'd sit on the porch in the evenings, reading them out loud to Clarissa. She'd listen, tears glimmering in her eyes. Each letter was like a small redemption. For her, for me, for the whole quiet town that had watched us fall and rise again. Then one afternoon, Clarissa came home, holding a brown envelope. "Mama," she said, smiling through tears. "They signed it. The new owners. They're giving the house back." I just stared at her. Not because I wanted it back, but because it felt like life itself was saying, "You passed the test." We didn't throw a party. We didn't make a big deal. We just stood there, holding the papers together, and laughed until we cried. She whispered, "I don't know what I did to deserve this." And I told her, "You didn't have to. Sometimes grace doesn't check your record before it knocks." That night, I couldn't sleep. I walked outside, barefoot, the way I used to when the world felt too heavy. The porch creaked beneath me. Same old sound, same comfort. The magnolia tree swayed, full of white blossoms again. I whispered to it. "You saw it all, didn't you? The storms, the silence, the second chances." The petals rustled softly, like it was answering back. And for the first time in years, I felt something unshakable in my chest. Peace. Not the kind you earn. The kind that finds you when you finally stop fighting. The next morning, Clarissa joined me on the porch with 2 cups of coffee. She handed one to me and said, "I think the house forgave me before I did." I smiled. Houses have good memories. They don't forget who built them. She nodded, her eyes bright. "Mama, I want to start over. Maybe use the house to help others, like women who need a place to stay, who lost their homes too." I stared at her, heart swelling. "Then that'll be its new purpose. Maybe that's why it came back to us." She grinned. "It's our second chance." And I said, "No, baby. It's our proof that love always finds a way home." The house was quiet again. Not the heavy, suffocating quiet it used to have, but the kind that feels like a deep breath after crying. You know the one. The stillness that finally lets you hear your own heartbeat. Weeks had passed since Marcus was taken away, since the papers came back into Clarissa's hands, since the town stopped whispering and started smiling again. But I didn't feel like celebrating. Peace, when it finally arrives, doesn't throw a party. It just sits beside you, softly, waiting for you to notice. Some nights, I'd wake up before dawn, the way old habits do. I'd make coffee, step outside barefoot, and watch the mist curl around the magnolia tree. Its blossoms were fading now, petals falling one by one, like little ghosts of everything we'd survived. That morning, Clarissa joined me on the porch. She didn't speak. She just sat there, wrapping her hands around her cup, eyes red but calm. We'd both been quiet a lot lately. There's a kind of healing that happens in silence, the kind that words can't reach. I thought about all the years I'd spent trying to fix everything. Her mistakes, her choices, her pain. I used to think love meant doing, saving, building. Now, I was beginning to understand it also meant letting her fall, letting her rise, letting her learn how to be her own strength. She looked at me finally and said, "Mama, it's strange. I thought getting the house back would make me happy, but I just feel tired." I nodded. "That's not tired, baby. That's empty space. It's what peace feels like before you fill it with something better." She smiled weakly. "And what do I fill it with?" "Gratitude," I said. "Always start there." Her eyes glistened in the soft morning light. She leaned her head on my shoulder, and for a moment, it was like she was 6 again, whispering secrets I already knew. Later that day, I went back inside and stood in the middle of the living room. The walls were new, fresh paint, smooth lines, but under that, I could still feel the pulse of the old house. The scars it kept hidden, the stories no brush could erase. I ran my fingers across the windowsill where her father once carved our initials. Time had blurred them, but they were still there. And I thought, maybe that's what forgiveness looks like. Not clean, not perfect, but still standing. I caught sight of my reflection in the window. The lines around my mouth looked deeper now, but there was something different in my eyes, a kind of softness I hadn't seen in decades. It wasn't weakness, it was knowing. That afternoon, I took a walk to the edge of town. The air was warm, full of the smell of earth and rain. Everywhere I went, people smiled, waved, asked how I was. I didn't tell them the whole truth, that I was still learning how to be okay without holding something together. But I said, I'm well, and for once, I meant it. When I passed the church, I stopped, the same one where I used to light candles when things felt too heavy. I sat on the steps, closing my eyes, feeling the wind brush through my hair. No prayers, no words, just being. A little boy rode past on his bike and waved. "Hi, Miss Naomi," he shouted. I smiled. Be careful out there. And that small, ordinary moment, just a child and an old woman trading kindness, hit me harder than any miracle. Because sometimes, grace doesn't come as lightning. It comes as sunlight on a porch, as laughter in the distance, as a second chance to start breathing again. That evening, Clarissa brought out an old photo album. We sat by the window, flipping through pictures, birthdays, summer picnics, her graduation. Every photo carried a different version of us, a story frozen mid-laughter, mid-hope. She pointed at one picture of her holding a toy hammer. "I wanted to be like you," she said. "Build things." I chuckled. "Guess you did. Just took you a few decades to finish the blueprint." She laughed, wiping her eyes. We didn't talk about the pain, or Marcus, or the years we'd lost. We didn't need to. Sometimes healing isn't saying sorry. It's sitting together and remembering why you ever loved each other in the first place. Before bed, I stood by the window again, looking out at the magnolia. It glowed silver under the moonlight, petals falling slow like a prayer. I whispered, "Thank you," though I didn't know to whom. Maybe to time, maybe to life, maybe to the quiet itself. Because for the first time, the quiet didn't feel like punishment. It felt like peace choosing to stay. This was one of those grandma stories that don't end in triumph, but in truth. One of those family drama stories where pain turns into purpose, where silence turns into grace. And as I turned off the lamp, I smiled, because the storm had passed, and I was still here, still standing, still grateful. The morning after that quiet night, I woke up to the smell of rain on dry soil. The air felt heavier than usual, like it was holding something I was supposed to notice. Clarissa was still asleep. The magnolia outside swayed slow and silent, like it was whispering secrets only the wind could understand. I made my coffee, sat on the porch, and for the first time in months, didn't think about the past. Then I heard footsteps, soft, steady. When I looked up, there was a man standing at the gate. Gray coat, walking stick, eyes that seemed older than time itself. He smiled. "Morning, Mrs. Grant. You have a beautiful view." I didn't remember seeing him before, but his voice felt familiar, like an echo from a dream I'd once trusted. "I'm sorry," I said. "Do I know you?" He shook his head gently. "Not yet, but you've been calling me for a while now." I frowned. "Calling you?" He looked at the magnolia tree, then back at me. "Every time you whispered why, that was the call." And just like that, he sat down beside me, as if he'd always belonged there. His name was Orion Sage. He told me he traveled, not for money, not for fame, but for conversations. "People forget the difference between fixing and understanding," he said. "So I remind them." I listened, curious but cautious. "And what are you here to remind me of?" He smiled, eyes soft. "That you didn't lose your house. You just learned who you were without it." Those words hit like truth, disguised as kindness. He kept talking, not fast, not slow, just enough to make me hear what I'd been avoiding. "You've spent your whole life building things," he said. "A home, a daughter, a legacy. But tell me, Mrs. Grant, when did you last build something inside yourself?" I didn't answer. I couldn't. He continued, "You thought your strength came from holding on. But sometimes, real strength comes from knowing when to open your hands." He paused and picked up a fallen magnolia petal from the porch floor. "When a flower drops its petals," he said, "people think it's dying. But it's not. It's preparing to bloom again. Maybe that's what you're doing too." I sat there, staring at the petal in his palm. He spoke with that kind of calm that didn't preach. It invited. Then he told me a story. "There was a woman I once met in Georgia," he said. "She ran a bakery for 30 years. When her shop burned down, she lost everything: recipes, savings, pride. But instead of rebuilding the same shop, she started teaching others to bake. Said the fire didn't take her gift, just her comfort. That's how purpose works. It waits behind what we think we own." I looked at the magnolia again. "So, you're saying I built the wrong thing?" He chuckled softly. "No, you built exactly what you were meant to. But now it's time to stop building walls and start building space." "Space?" He nodded. "Between you and your pain. Between what you gave and what you expected back." His words dug deep. I realized I'd never truly given without expecting something. A thank you, a return call, a visit home. Even my sacrifices had strings, invisible but strong. He must have seen it on my face, because he said, "It's not wrong to want love to come back to you. But life doesn't work on trades, Mrs. Grant. It works on seeds." I leaned forward. "Seeds?" He smiled, warm and knowing. "Every thought, every action, every word, you plant them, and life grows them when it's ready, not when you demand it. You planted love, and you got pain. But maybe pain was just how life watered the soil." I sat there, stunned, the truth sitting heavy, but right. He continued, "You see, gratitude isn't saying thank you when things go right. It's saying thank you because things exposed what needed healing." He pointed at the house. "You thought you lost that place. But what you really lost was your illusion that love could be built like brick and wood. You forgot that love is built like breath. It comes, it goes. And when you stop chasing it, it comes home again." The wind picked up, brushing through my hair, carrying the smell of earth and old rain. He closed his eyes, like he could hear something I couldn't. I said, "It's hard to forgive when you've spent your life being the one who fixes everything." He nodded slowly. "Of course it is. Because fixing keeps you in control. Forgiving means letting the story finish itself." That line sank straight into me. I realized that for years, I'd been living half a story: the builder, the protector, the mother, but never the receiver. I'd never let life give me anything back. He leaned in a little closer and said quietly, "You've mistaken survival for purpose. But they're not the same. Survival gets you through the night. Purpose makes you want to wake up in the morning." I asked, "And how do I find that purpose now?" He smiled and tapped his chest. "You don't find it. You remember it. It's been waiting here, under the rubble of everything you thought you lost." He stood then, walking toward the magnolia tree. He touched its trunk gently. "You see this tree? It's been cut, pruned, frozen, struck by lightning, but it still grows because it knows one truth: life doesn't ask permission to start again." He turned back to me. "That's your story, Mrs. Grant. A grandma's story, sure, but not the kind about heartbreak. It's about rebuilding from the inside out. A family drama story that finally ends in peace, not pride. I felt tears roll down my cheeks. But they didn't sting this time. They felt clean, like rain washing away years of dust. He smiled softly. "You're ready now." "For what?" I asked. "To stop remembering what you lost and start noticing what stayed." He began to walk away, his steps slow and certain. I wanted to call out, to ask who sent him, how he knew me, why it all made so much sense. But instead, I just watched. At the gate, he turned and said one last thing. "Your house may stand on land, but your peace will stand on truth. And truth doesn't crumble." Then he was gone. I sat there for a long while after, staring at the spot where he'd stood. The morning light shifted, landing on the magnolia blossoms, making them shine like little lanterns. And for the first time, I understood what he meant. I hadn't built my life wrong. I'd just been building it outside instead of within. The world hadn't betrayed me. It had mirrored me. And now, it was finally showing me who I'd become. So I whispered to the air, "Thank you, Orion Sage." And the wind carried it away, soft and endless. For days after Orion Sage left, the world felt different. Lighter, maybe, or just quieter in a new way. The silence wasn't heavy anymore. It was full, alive, breathing. I caught myself smiling while watering the plants, humming to songs I didn't remember knowing. But healing never walks in a straight line. It wanders, it doubles back, it tests the ground before trusting it. 3 nights later, Clarissa called from the house. Her voice trembled between guilt and hope. "Mama, I was reading the notes you left in the drawers. You used to write little prayers on the back of grocery lists." I smiled softly. "I didn't write prayers, baby. I wrote reminders." "Reminders of what?" "That no storm lasts forever." There was a pause on the line. Then she whispered, "Can I come over?" I said yes. When she arrived, the sun was setting, painting the street in gold and honey. She stood there with her hair loose for the first time in years. No makeup, no mask, just her. She looked tired, but beautifully human. We sat in the kitchen, the one room that had always felt like neutral ground. For a while, we didn't speak. The clock ticked between us like an old friend, measuring forgiveness instead of time. Finally, she said, "I've been thinking about what Orion said." I looked up. "You met him?" She shook her head. "No, but I think I heard him in your voice. When you told me about him, it felt like he'd been talking to me too." She glanced at her hands, then back at me. "I realized I was angry at you for things you never did. You gave me everything, Mama. I just didn't know how to carry it." I reached across the table, covering her hands with mine. We both carried too much the wrong way. Her tears fell fast, like they'd been waiting for permission. "I thought success meant never needing you. I thought love had to prove itself." "And what do you think now?" I asked. She smiled through her tears. "Now I think love is what survives when pride dies." We went for a walk that evening, barefoot across the yard. The air smelled of cut grass and rain, and the magnolia tree swayed above us, glowing pale in the dusk. Clarissa looked at it and whispered, "It's still here, after everything." I nodded. "That's because it stopped trying to be something else. That's the first lesson Orion taught me." She turned to me, curious. "The first?" I smiled. "There were 3. We sat on the steps, and I told her. The first lesson, I said, was about mirrors. Life is always showing us who we are, not who we pretend to be. When I was angry at you, I wasn't angry at you. I was angry at the part of me that never felt seen." She nodded slowly, whispering, "That's me too." The second lesson was about seeds. Everything we say, think, and do plants something. Some seeds bloom fast, like daisies. Others take years, like oaks. And sometimes, when we plant love, we still get pain first, because that's how roots make space to grow. Clarissa stared at her feet. So, all this pain was growing something. Maybe it was just watering what we couldn't see yet. The third lesson, I said, was about ownership. We spend our lives saying what's ours, our house, our money, our family. But nothing truly belongs to us, not even the people we love. They're gifts we get to care for a while. The moment we try to keep them, we lose them. She looked at me, tears shining in her eyes. I never understood that until I sold the house. I reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. Now you do, and that's what makes the lesson worth it. We sat there a long while, watching the light fade into evening. It was quiet, but not empty. It was the kind of quiet that makes you feel like the world is still listening. Clarissa broke the silence. Mama, I want to use the house the way you used your life. Not to keep things, but to give things. Maybe a shelter, a place for women who need somewhere safe to start again. I felt tears sting my eyes. That's the most beautiful thing I've ever heard. She smiled. You think I can do it? I looked at her, my grown daughter, who had fallen and risen in the same breath. You already started. A week later, we hosted a small gathering in the living room. Friends, neighbors, women who'd lost their homes or were trying to rebuild their lives. The walls glowed soft under the new lights, the smell of magnolia drifting through open windows. Clarissa stood up to speak, her voice trembling but strong. My mother built this house with her hands, she said, but she taught me something even stronger. You can rebuild anything if you start from love. Applause filled the room, gentle and warm. I didn't cry. I just smiled, feeling every part of me finally rest. That night, after everyone left, Clarissa and I sat on the porch again. The air was cool, the moon high. Mama, she said, do you think Orion Sage was real? I chuckled. Does it matter? She smiled. I guess not. Maybe he's like the magnolia. He shows up when we're ready to grow again. Later, when she went to bed, I stayed outside. The night was deep, and the stars looked close enough to touch. I thought about what Orion said, that life mirrors what we plant. So I closed my eyes and whispered, thank you for every hard season. You taught me how to bloom slow. A breeze moved through the yard, cool and kind. And in that moment, I felt it. Not just peace, but purpose. The kind that doesn't fade when the story ends. This was no longer just my house or her redemption. It was a new seed, planted in the soil of second chances. One day, maybe years from now, someone else will sit on this same porch and whisper their own why. And maybe, just maybe, the wind will carry the same voice that once visited me. This is what life had been trying to tell me all along. You don't keep what you hold tight. You keep what you nurture and let grow. Love, forgiveness, gratitude. Those aren't things you own. They're things you become. And that's what Orion Sage really meant when he said, truth doesn't crumble, because truth isn't something you find. It's something you live. So I sat there until the stars dimmed, whispering to the dawn, this is my peace now. This is my home. It's been a year since that day in court, the day justice came home, not as punishment, but as peace. Sometimes I still wake up before dawn, not because of worry, but because silence has become my oldest friend. Ethan's laughter now fills the mornings. He's taller, older, still quiet, but his eyes shine with the kind of peace that only comes after storms. Clarissa visits every week, and sometimes, when she thinks I'm not looking, she stares at him, like she's meeting her son for the first time. I've stopped asking why everything happened. The truth is, life doesn't always give answers. It gives invitations to grow, to forgive, to love again. One afternoon, as I was tending the small garden behind our new home, Clarissa came to me with an envelope. "Mom," she said, her voice soft, "Ethan wants you to see this." Inside was a photo, a group of kids, all smiling, all wearing matching t-shirts that said, "Mindable, Apps for Inclusion." Ethan had started a program for children with autism to learn coding, using the app he built himself. My hands shook as I held that picture. He wasn't just building software. He was building bridges, quiet ones that reached hearts instead of headlines. And that's when it hit me. What I'd been trying to build my whole life wasn't a home. It was this, a legacy of love, passed through the hands of those who once broke me. That evening, the three of us sat together under the oak tree, watching the sunset stain the sky in orange and rose. Clarissa spoke softly. "I think I finally understand what Orion Sage meant." I smiled. "Which part?" She looked at the horizon. "That truth doesn't crumble. I tried to bury it, Mama, but it always found a way back." I nodded, the light catching her face in gold. "Because truth is patient. It waits for us to be ready." Ethan looked up at me. "Grandma, will you help me teach other kids too?" His voice was shy, but his eyes were full of something I hadn't seen in years. Purpose. I took his hand. "Of course I will, baby. That's what grandmas do." He grinned, and for the first time, I saw my husband's smile flicker through him. It felt like the past and the present had finally agreed to stop fighting. Later that night, I walked outside alone. The stars were bright, scattered like breadcrumbs, leading back to everything I'd once lost. I thought of Orion Sage, how he had appeared and vanished like a wind between worlds. I could almost hear his voice again. "When you stop chasing justice and start living truth, life will fight for you." He was right. Justice had come, but not from courtrooms or verdicts. It had come from within, from letting go of my pride long enough to let love return. I whispered into the night, "Thank you, Orion Sage." The magnolia tree swayed gently, as if answering back. When morning came, I made a cup of coffee and sat by the window. Clarissa was packing Ethan's backpack, humming to herself. For years, that sound had been missing from this house, the sound of ordinary love. I realized that peace doesn't arrive like fireworks. It tiptoes in, barefoot, carrying forgiveness in both hands. Before they left, Clarissa hugged me long and tight. "Mom," she said, "I want you to know I'm proud to be your daughter." I smiled, feeling tears rise, not of sadness, but of recognition. For decades, I'd been the builder, the fighter, the survivor. Now I was something simpler, a witness to what love becomes when you stop trying to control it. After they drove off, I stayed on the porch for a while. The wind brushed my cheek, soft as breath, and I thought about the women I'd been, the mother who worked 2 jobs, the widow who refused to break, the grandmother who thought healing meant holding on. But healing, I've learned, isn't holding on. It's loosening your grip and trusting that what's real will stay. I picked up my journal and began to write. Not to remember, but to remind. Dear life, thank you for every storm that showed me my own strength. Thank you for every silence that became my teacher. Thank you for showing me that love doesn't leave. It transforms. When I finished, I closed the book and smiled. People still call this one of those family drama stories. A mother, a daughter, a broken promise turned blessing. But to me, it's something simpler. It's one of those grandma stories that start with loss and end with light. If you've been carrying something too heavy for too long, set it down. Let life breathe for you a while. And if this story touched your heart, share it with someone who needs to believe that broken things can still become beautiful. Tap subscribe, not for me, but for the next soul who needs a reminder that no ending is final. Because love, real love, never stops finding a way home.